Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this County of Brant official plan virtual town hall meeting. And thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. I know that there are a lot of things that compete for your time and attention and your interest in the new official plan initiative, and of course, your interest in the ongoing vibrancy and success of the community and of the county as a whole is much appreciated. I do a fair bit of this kind of work, and it's my personal belief that people who like yourselves, who take time out of your busy personal and professional lives to contribute constructively to matters of civic and community interest are always most deserving of our gratitude and respect. So thank you again for joining us, and I look forward, as I'm sure do you, to a productive and informative session. For those of you whom I've not yet met, my name is Glenn Poche. I'm the head of a firm called GLPI, and it's my pleasure to serve as the independent facilitator for the meeting. So again, it might be important for you to know that I am not an employee of the county or of any planning consultants retained to assist with the new official plan, or OP for short. My role is simply to facilitate the discussion. The only bias I bring to the meeting, if I can call it that, is toward achieving the best result for us all. I'll introduce a few others in a couple of minutes, but first let's talk a bit about what it is that we're up to tonight. And you'll hear more about this later, but really simply put, the County of Brant is creating a new official plan with a view to ensuring that it meets the needs of the community, both today and for many years to come. The initiative will also ensure that the official plan is aligned with provincial policies and that it updates the framework for future land use in the county. The OP initiative is addressing a variety of themes and topic areas, and tonight we're focused on one of those, which is managing growth and development in the County of Brant. A future session on building healthy and complete communities is upcoming on September 21st, and you can probably see the reference on the slide there. So tonight is the first of these virtual meetings. And by the way, the county has prepared a discussion paper on growth management, which is available on the county's website. And you can see it on the slide, but I'll read it out for those of you who may not have screen access. It's www.brant.ca/new official plan. Again, that's www.brant.ca/new official plan. And in fact, discussion papers on other topics will be rolled out in the coming weeks. And the discussion papers are important in that they outline and explore key issues and topics on which the county's OP will focus. So I very much encourage you to review them as they become available. Now, we have a number of objectives for the meeting tonight, and they're reflected in the session agenda, which is as follows, and on slide 3, or we'll be moving to slide 3 now. We're obviously in the opening remarks component right now. In a moment, I'll provide a bit of information about how you can participate in tonight's online meeting, and I'll cover a few housekeeping items as well. I'll then invite some of the county's elected officials to share some opening observations and additional context. And I'll also introduce some of the key team members from the planning department that you'll be hearing from this evening. We'll then hear from a number of County of Brant staff, whom again I'll introduce shortly, who will deliver a presentation on the official plan initiative and more specifically on managing growth and development in the county. And this will include, beyond what's shown on the slide, an introduction to the initiative, including things that have been heard, that is some of the public sentiment that's out there. We'll talk a little bit about growth in the county and the role of an approach to public engagement as things move forward. There'll be a description of what an OP is and its role in the county. We'll hear about key elements of the provincial growth plan, including requirements with implications for the County of Brant's official plan, notable thematic topics of interest, and so forth. There'll also be an overview of what growth management is and where it fits in the context of an official plan. We'll hear about the technical requirements of an OP, the role of a municipal comprehensive review, and the team will also touch on population and employment growth forecasts, and we'll hear about the role that the county can play in growth management and the options that are available. And there'll be even more than all of that. At the end of the presentation segment, we'll be inviting questions of factor clarification on our topic. So County of Brant staff will address as many questions as there is time for this evening. We'll also outline the range of opportunities that are available outside of this session for you to provide comments, ideas, ask other questions, and so forth. It's important to remember, and this is really important to remember, that we are early in the process. The county is looking to stimulate an informed discussion about a number of issues and wants to hear community perspectives. The county recognizes the importance of understanding different points of view and harnessing the best ideas from wherever they may come. At this point in the process, there are no options or policies being presented. Those will be part of future stages of the OP initiative. I'll also note that some people have sent questions in advance of the meeting, and our speakers will do their best to address many of them during the presentation or toward the latter part of the meeting. And please note, though, that the team is not addressing any individual property or site-specific items this evening. We're dealing with the broader policy context in this meeting. So really simply put, tonight is about making you aware of the OP initiative purpose, including the process for undertaking it and the current status. It's about providing information about managing growth and development in the county. Again, a key theme being addressed in the OP initiative. It's about helping us all to better understand the issues, the challenges, and the opportunities associated with the topics. It's about providing an opportunity to participate by asking questions and by being aware of other avenues for sharing comments. And of course, again, we'll talk about next steps and where things go from here. So a few words about the nature of this Zoom session, which is slide 4, again, for those of you following along. First of all, this session is being recorded so that the content can be made available post-session to those who are unable to join us this evening, and so that there is a record of the proceedings. For those of you who have not used Zoom before, I will very briefly describe the functionality of this webinar. As an attendee in the webinar, you cannot be seen or heard by us or by anyone else participating. We will occasionally use some real-time polling to ask you questions. And throughout this webinar, please send us your questions using the live Q&A icon on the panel at the bottom of your device. This is your way to engage with us during this public information center or this town hall. Again, during this Zoom session, questions can only be submitted by using the Q&A function, and an image is on screen to help you find the function depending on the type of device you're using. Our technical moderators will be queuing the questions to put to our responder panel during the question and answer part of the webinar. You can adjust the size of the presentation and speaker screen by sliding the toggle between both screens to your preferred size. And if you have any technical issues at any time this evening, write to us either using the Q&A icon, or if that's not working for you, send it to the email address officialplan@brant.ca. Again, that's officialplan@brant.ca. And one of the technical moderators will try to assist you. And in fact, you can send emails to officialplan@brant.ca at any time this evening or tomorrow or in the coming weeks if you have any comments you want to share. One other thing about Zoom, for those who have chosen to dial into the meeting, in other words, you are using a simple phone and not a computer or web-enabled device or a smartphone, you'll be able to listen to the presentation but not share any questions. The same is the case for anyone joining us as an observer through the live stream on Facebook. If you're following the presentation using a hard copy of it, either one that was on the website or that you've downloaded as a PDF, we'll ask our presenters to periodically reference the slide numbers to help you follow along. So again, if you have questions about anything you're hearing in the presentation, or perhaps that's not in the presentation but related to our thematic topic area, please forward them through the Zoom Q&A function as they occur to you. Do not wait until the end of the presentation. Send them as they occur to you so that our technical moderators can review them and prepare them to be addressed later on. If due to time constraints, your question is not addressed this evening, be assured that it will be considered in the County of Brant staff documentation of questions and comments received as part of the OP initiative. And more information will be forthcoming and posted online. So we have a number of county staff who are monitoring the Q&A function. They'll be taking comprehensive notes and so forth. We also have a number of our esteemed elected officials joining us this evening. And I won't name them all, but I will thank them for joining us and for the interest in our topic. I will introduce three of them, given that they are going to share some observations and additional context. And in the order in which they'll be speaking, we're going to hear from Mayor David Bailey, then Councillor John Bell, then Councillor Mark Laferriere. And it's my pleasure now to hand things first to Mayor Bailey. Go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, it's nice to see you again, Glenn. And I'd like to thank staff for putting this together tonight, this town hall. It's a very exciting time to be on this council. We are very proud of what we're doing as a council, and we want to get this right. I'd like to thank you all for all you're doing for the control of the COVID-19. Everything you do every day to make it a safer community is appreciated by myself and our council. We are trying very hard to make the County of Brant the safest place around, and I think we're doing a fairly good job. We have a very easy product to sell in the County of Brant. People, as you know, are coming to us in leaps and bounds, and I think that we really do need to get this right. We have a vision as a council as to how we see the County of Brant. And we love to have these formats so that you can give your opinions and tell us the direction that you want to see us take. Because we get so excited and wrapped up on the things we're doing on a daily basis that we need you to have the longer vision because we don't know it all. We just need to know what way you want us to go. So thank you for having the time tonight to be with us. And again, I know that the management of the growth of the county is always on staff's mind. It's always on council's mind. And I know that the residents are always thinking about what's going to happen. They're concerned with maybe some of the things that have happened too quickly for them. And with good reason. You're living, especially the people in Paris right now are living under a lot of stress. And I don't blame you. It's a very dusty, very confusing, very detoured place to live right now, but try to imagine when it's finished, and we'll get through it. And but I do feel your pain, and I know your aggravation in Paris. So thank you all, and we're not going to make some of the mistakes that have been made in the past. Not that I'm throwing any blame anywhere, but we need to move forward and get on with it. So thank you, and thank you, Glenn, for putting this together too.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a real pleasure to see you as well. So let's hand things to Councillor Bell. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody. Those of you that don't know me, I'm one of the two councillors for Ward 3 here in Paris. An official plan, the OP, as Glenn mentioned, is a policy document that guides short-term and long-term development in our community. It's like a Bible to us for land use planning. And a new official plan as opposed to just updating the existing one, which has been around for the last 10 years, is an even bigger deal. Approving it's probably the most important and far-reaching decision that this council will make, because it's going to affect the future for many years to come. And I, for one, want to see significant public input and understanding of the issues that underpin the OP. A bit of history, I mean, in 1999, we became a county, but we at that point really inherited 6 plans. And it's not really up until now that we're moving away from having an amalgam of 6 plans to 1 plan, which represents the plan for the county of Bran. And that's really an exciting opportunity. And that's why these virtual town halls are so important. I mean, thanks to Jennifer and the county staff for organising this. And this is just the first of a number of sessions to come. My own personal context and interest in developing the plan. I joined council 2 years ago after spending 4 years on the Committee of Adjustment. So I had some idea of what a plan was and all of the various amendments that came with it. Indeed, I campaigned partly on a platform of wanting to bring some order into what seemed like the haphazard and out of control development in and around Paris, and the mayor's just talked to that. There appeared to be little obvious common sense scheduling or pacing of development in relation to the infrastructure we had available. And anybody that's on Rest Acres Road now will realise there's a sort of cart and horse story here. It was unclear also where we were going to locate our future commercial developments. I don't still have logical answers to everything, but I've learned a lot in the last 2 years. Urban and industrial planning is complex. And what I also learn is it's heavily regulated. And that's a thread that you need to keep in mind tonight. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a significant input to this process. We will, we can. And I'm delighted to be involved in helping shape the future of the county, both through my role in the council as chair of the Planning Development Committee, but also through these public engagements. I am a resident of the county. I'm interested as an individual, as a councillor, as a chair. But I do want to stress that this is a plan for the county. It's not a Paris plan, even though Paris will feature very heavily and its continued development is going to be front and centre in many things. We have to think about the integration of all kinds of aspects of county life: transportation, housing, economic development, agriculture. It goes on. It's meant to be a comprehensive guide to us moving forward. So some final thoughts before we get going. I don't want to underplay the huge role that provincial direction has on this process. It limits our degrees of freedom, but we should use every single degree of freedom we have to make this the best possible plan we can. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Councillor. And let's hear from your colleague, Councillor Marc Laferriere. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm one of the councillors here for the County of Brant, Paris, Ward 2, along with Steve Howes, who's on this call. I see Councillor Miller on this call. I see Councillor Pierce on this call. I see Councillor Gatward and Councillors McAlpine also on this call. And I just wanted to mention that. I just want to speak to a couple of really quick things. I already see that we have a lot of really good questions in the webinar chat. And I want to say that while this is probably the most important thing as a council and as a community we'll be doing for the next 10 years in terms of a really major issue, which is growth, development, etc., that a lot of the things that we're talking about as well in the chat, things like sports facilities, secondary schools, transportation, bridges and bypasses, that's work we're also doing as well as this, right? This is something that we're looking forward on and looking forward to do. What I want folks to remember though, and what I want people who are on here, we have about 30, 40 on here. We have a ton more on Facebook right now. What I want folks to do is, you're interested in this. You're interested in this so much that you're here on a webinar on a Wednesday evening during a vice presidential debate that's probably going to be very highly viewed because you care. And I know lots of other people do care about this, but they may not be aware of some of the opportunities to take part. Last time we did an official plan, we want to get as many people as possible. This time we want to as well. So if you're on this call, if you're watching this after the fact, please share it with other people. If you have a friend, a neighbor, somebody in the community that's complained about growth and development, that has ideas about things we can do, that maybe just needs to know more about what has happened and what could happen in the future, share this with them. And also share with them that on October 21st at 7, we're going to be doing another one of these, right? We need as many people as possible to be involved, and I see you as the seeds of the most interested, the most knowledgeable to be here today. Please share this with other people. Let's get as many people as possible during this time where we have to be more socially distant, but please connect other people with the information here today, because we really need more community input and we need to go through this together. I think about the things 10 years ago, 20 years ago that people probably didn't think of that we're dealing with today. Right? And I want us to think in creative ways, future-looking, forward-looking, to see how we can, foresee what our kids and grandkids will be thinking and wanting us to have said now, 10 years, 20 years from now. So that's a hopeful message, but it really involves you, in any way, shape, or form you can, getting the word out about this process so it can be as successful and as inclusive as possible. So thanks so much, and on to a great session.
Great. Thank you again, Mayor Bailey and Councillors Bell and LaFerrier. Now let's take a moment to introduce the staff team that you'll be hearing from this evening, either as presenters of information or as responders to the different questions that may be asked. And I'll invite them each to just very quickly turn on their mics and their videos so that they can each say a quick hello as I introduce them, so that you can put a face to the name. Let me start with Pam Dusling, who is the General Manager of Development Services. Pam?
Thank you, Glenn. And hi, Glenn. I haven't met you yet. It's nice to meet you. And I want to say thank you for hosting and moderating tonight. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Welcome, everyone. As the General Manager of Development Services, I have to say that this is the most important thing that our department is doing. This is the plan, as one of our council members said, this is our Bible on how growth happens in the County of Brant. This is how your community will look for your children. And so your input and feedback tonight and through the whole process over the next year or so is incredibly important. So give us your feedback. We want your feedback. This is your community. This is your plan. And I also just want to take time to say thank you to all the council members that have come out tonight. Your support is always greatly appreciated. And also thank you to the staff, Michelle, Jessica, Brandon, and especially Jennifer, for all the work you've been putting in on the OP and the work yet to come.
Great. Thanks, Pam. And let me introduce some of those other staff to everyone. Matt Vaughn, are you there? He's the Director of Development Planning.
Yes, hi, I'm here. Very excited to be part of this process. We've got an amazing policy team working on this project. I will not say too much because my colleagues have said quite a bit, and I'm very anxious to get going with the meeting tonight and to hear everyone's feedback about what they want for the future of Brant. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Matt. And we have Jennifer Boyer, who is the Manager of Policy Planning.
Hi, everyone. I look forward to engaging with you tonight. I'll be doing the majority of the presentation, and I'll probably be answering some questions for you. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. And we have Michelle Schaefel, who is an environmental planner.
Good evening, everybody. Fairly new to the county in a new position, and I'm looking forward to all the feedback on environmental planning as we go through this process.
Thank you. And we have Brandon Courtleave, who is a planner.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You'll hear a bit more from me in a little bit with this presentation, but we look forward to engaging with you guys.
And we also have Jessica Kitchen, who is also a planner with the county.
Good evening, everyone. Excited to be here and excited to hear your questions and your feedback as we move forward this exciting process.
Great. So given that time is of the essence, let's begin with some core context setting information and an introduction to the initiative. We'll then get into greater depth about the new OP and some of the material relating to managing growth. and development in the county. And our presenters are Brandon Courtleave, who will kick things off, and Jennifer Boyer, who, as mentioned, will take us through the bulk of the information. Again, both are County of Brant staff. And as a reminder, some of you are already doing it, which is terrific, but as questions occur to you during the presentation, please do share them through the Zoom Q&A function. So I'll invite Brandon to start us off.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Glenn. All right, folks. So tonight's discussion is going to introduce one of the prominent topics with our new official plan project and the foundation for lots of the decisions our official plan will help us make in the future. And that is growth management. That's what we're here to chat about. We have our topics of interest for the official plan, building healthy and complete communities, protecting what we value, how we green, planning for infrastructure, transportation and mobility, and economic development and prosperity. And those are kind of our buckets, our topics of interest that we'll be addressing slowly through this process to kind of gather feedback and keep things themed to specific conversations. Our official plan is going to be our guidebook for making decisions on things that matter to us. And that includes mostly how we manage our growth. So we'll start off by briefly explaining kind of what an official plan is for those who might not know, why we're creating a new one, and then we'll chat about what it takes to create a new official plan. We'll dive into that importance and how it will help us manage our growth. I'll give you a quick hint, though. It is a very important document, as we've heard many people say, for managing our growth and development in a municipality, if not the most important. And making changes to the document is also important to make sure that it reflects our identity as the County of Brant and what we want our growth to look like. So growth happens, it is good for us, it just needs to be done the right way, and in a way that keeps our communities as a charming and prosperous place to live, work, and play. So we have an official plan because the province tells us we need one, but if we have one already, why do we need to create a new one? So the reason that we need to create a new one is because it is a foundational element of all things land use planning here in the County of Brant. The province tells us how often we have to update things. And when I say land use planning, I mean exactly that, what we plan to do with our land here in the County of Brant. So where do we build things? What do we protect? How do we enhance our natural surroundings? How do we mitigate the impacts of climate change? Where our services will go, all of those things, very kind of particular things. But the topic tonight suggests we're going to focus on those changes from a growth management perspective. Like I mentioned, the province tells us that we need to update or create a new official plan within 10 years of a new plan coming into effect. So our current official plan that's in place right now was approved in 2012. So we're at the point where we need to revise our policies. And the province has also updated some of their framework as well. So things like the provincial policy statement and the growth plan, which I'm sure you'll hear a bit more about during this presentation. But we need to make sure our policies reflect those updates as well. The province does give us certain things we need to do and a timeline by which we need to have it completed. So July 1st, 2022, that's kind of our key date here for our official plan. We need to make sure everything is done and off to the province so that they can approve it by that date. That's the due date that they've given us, and the clock is ticking, so we need to make sure everything's in order. They set these timeframes to stay on top of our policies. They encourage us to update things. An official plan is very much a living document. It sets a foundation that needs to be adjusted as needed to better suit our needs and desires. And we need to make sure our new official plan gives solid guidance to our growth, to our development, and how we use our land. So as shown here on page 6 of the presentation, this new official plan will take the requirements given to us by the province, the technical background studies that are being completed in the background to tell us how much space we need to support our growth, and then the objectives and priorities that you guys, through public engagement, will be helping us figure out so that we can create some unique policies for our situations here in the County of Brant. We'll be working to keep all of those wheels turning and making sure that our council has the most up-to-date and accurate information, and you guys as well with the public. And we want to make sure that any of the decision-making that our council is doing on our behalf, it's the best and the most accurate for the County of Brant. So that's where you come in. This isn't just an official plan, it's the County of Brant's plan. And we need to engage and discuss what we want our future to look like. So with that said, just a quick look at our project timelines. So it is a pretty quick timeline for us here with our official plan. So as we mentioned, we have a deadline of July 2022. So we're rolling full steam ahead, and we're at a time that has been disrupted by the ongoing pandemic, which includes disrupting how we're able to chat with residents and with each other even, working here at the county. We're working hard to keep things rolling and expect to have our final OP in front of council for adoption by December of 2021. So just more than a year to get that all sorted. And then once council makes their decision on that and things are good to go, we send it off to the province, they review it, and they put their approval in place before July 1st of 2022. So we have our work plan here in our schedule, as you can see on page 7 here. It outlines the 5 phases for our official plan process. And obviously due to some delays with COVID and we were waiting for information with the province, we've had to kind of squeeze things into a more ambitious schedule. But you can see here that we are currently in phase 2, which is our key engagement phase. We'll obviously be engaging through the entirety of the process, but after the launch, last fall, there's been lots of background work that's gone on, including updates to our council to share kind of the process of how things are going. We have a consultant preparing information for our municipal comprehensive review. We'll learn about a bit more about that later, as well as a growth management strategy, what our residential and employment land needs are for our growth. All that kind of technical work that's being done in the background to help inform our decisions and help us create new policies. So in the forefront, though, with us being in phase 2, we have some of the information that we need from you guys, and we need to ask questions and we need to chat with you about these key topics, and especially about growth management. With tonight's presentation, we're going to be answering kind of 4 key questions, and those are what is an official plan, what goes into making it. We'll give you a very high level kind of update on how that looks, what our current situation is involved with our growth and what that looks like, and then where we go from there. But first, let's take a snapshot of what we're hearing from the public and growth management. We've had some surveys and information available on the website. And it's been great. Public engagement is important in any planning process, and especially so with creating an official plan. So what you're saying needs to be translated into our policies and into our official plan to help properly manage our growth. So what are we hearing? First of all, thank you to everyone who's had input so far. We had about 140 responses so far for our growth management survey, and that will be open for a little while more. We also had over 200 responses for recent projects like our tree conservation update and our ARUs, which is great. It's great to see people engaged and wanting to make sure that the policies are in place that best reflect us. There are lots of opportunities for involvement, especially with the new official plan. So our surveys, the town halls, booking appointments to chat either with your counselor or with staff. We're here to listen. That's kind of one of the key messages of tonight as well. So please feel free to reach out to us. So what is it that we are hearing? We get lots of great comments that come in, especially through the surveys as well. Emails, phone calls to staff about growth, especially, and what we might like to see change, or what we do want to see change. So just kind of a high level summary of a few of the survey questions so far. So 43% of the respondents so far think that we should be mixing our growth more. So building inwards and not using as much land, but also mixing kind of residential and commercial in so that more amenities are closer together. People have made that very clear. We'll hear more about these ways to direct growth later in the presentation. But it's also interesting because 32% of our respondents so far have said they think that single detached housing is the most appropriate form of housing for the county. So I thought that was an interesting kind of note. We had a few choices there for housing types. We'll talk about some of that during our Building Healthy and Complete Communities and moving on further in our presentations. But like I said, a lot of new neighborhoods, they want more mixed use residential and commercial amenities, being able to walk to spaces. We've got lots of comments about traffic congestion, servicing, transit connections to other municipalities, and then praise for affordable like internal networks like our e-ride program. And people have said that they see the county as kind of a blend of smaller urbanized areas with small town charm and strong rural flair. They've pointed out developments in areas where they believe are perfect examples of what not to do. We've had questions about how we're addressing heritage conservation, what we're doing to ensure our resilience for climate change, adding more health and education services, keeping the charm of our downtown areas. So some very specific comments that people are making, but there are trends to it. Affordability is another one that we see a lot of key issue, and many people feel the speed at which we're growing is out of control. And all these points obviously are very valid and are things that we can address through this official plan process. So what is it that we're looking to do? Where is our control for growth management? Well, an official plan is the foundation to a lot of that control. We take the targets the province gives us, we do the analysis of our situation here in Brant, and we create a made in Brant policy, that policy framework that will give us guidance and manage our growth. The province gives us a few tools and building blocks to start off, but creating an official plan that reflects our community is one of the most important steps in creating a solid foundation to manage our growth. We all know that it's difficult to build a building on an unsteady foundation, and that's why it's key to have those policies in place and rebuild a solid foundation to manage our growth. And we need you to join us to do that. So with that said, we're just going to play a short video here that we've released.
It's a really exciting time to be in the County of Brant. It's such a great place to live, work, and play. The community is changing and growing. We're planning into the future to the year 2051. Wow, I will be in my 40s and will probably have a family of my own. The decisions we make today about changes will affect our community for future generations to come. As the County of Brant continues to grow, we need to think long term. We need to think about managing growth, protecting the environment and heritage, better transportation choices, and so much more. We need to make sure there are different places to live, choices in housing that are actually attainable. I mean, I don't want to live with my parents forever. What types of jobs can I look forward to? How will I get around the county? I know I love riding my skateboard and being active. How are we going to respond to climate change? We need to decide now how to manage our growth and resources for our future. It's hard to imagine, but we need to plan for this unknown future. Doing this requires input from you. What do you want the County of Brant to look like in 10 years? How about 30 years from now? Creating a new official plan is tough work, but we're up for the challenge. Will you join us? We need help from you and others in our community to help create a simply grand official plan for our future brand.
So as we see with that video, and as you'll see a little bit more with the presentation tonight and our conversations moving forward, involvement and engagement is so important in this process. There's going to be plenty of ways to be involved with this project. We're hoping to have a little bit of everything for everyone. And we'll highlight some of those particulars at the very end to keep you all involved. But for now, I'd like to introduce my colleague and our project manager for this project, Jennifer Boyer. She's going to guide us through some of the more technical information with this process, give us a snapshot of what's going on with growth here in the county, and then take us towards the end of the presentation. I'll hand it over to Jen.
All right, thanks very much, Brandon. I'm going to take up about 20 or so minutes of your time, and I just want to acknowledge everyone on Facebook Live. I want to say hi to everyone, and thanks for joining us. And we are recording this session, and we will be posting it on our website and also on the county's YouTube later as we move forward after this meeting. Next slide, please, Brandon. And also, please, those who are on the Zoom, we see quite a few questions coming in, and we will get back to you at the end of the meeting. We're tagging them for certain staff, so we will get back to you at the end. But we will move forward with some polls throughout the session just to break it up. So I just want to do a quick overview. Brandon outlaid it really well. Why are we doing this? Why now? And what do we have to do in quite a short time frame? So really we have to do quite a bit of a legislative exercise, which is a bit of the boring part, but we actually have some exciting pieces, and that's like what it is tonight. It's public engagement and it's your input. But really we have requirements from the province and they're under the Planning Act, but really up above it's the provincial policy statement. And we also just have to adhere to all the legislative things, and we don't have some flexibility, but then there's other pieces that we do, and I'll outline that tonight in terms of growth management. As Brandon said, our official plan that currently exists is 2012, but it was actually started in 2008, and that was to actually implement the 2006 growth plan. So it's a bit out of date, and we have to revise our policy framework. But really what we're trying to do is, even though the official plan ends up being a bunch of words in a document, it's not really, because it's actually your land designation, it's where you live, it's everything that you do in terms of transportation, jobs, the economy, the environment, everything. It lays out guidance for the future and how we actually use land and develop. And really the big piece of it, and I'll explain that in a minute, is really a growth management strategy. And that's the piece we're talking about today. And what is it, and really is it going to make a difference? Because we've heard you, and we acknowledge, as Brandon said, that there's a lot of comments, and we understand that in terms of growth and the point that the County of Brant is in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, how that's affecting us over time. Next slide. So part of what we're doing is the public engagement, and Brandon outlined our schedule, which is quite rapid to 2022. What we're trying to do is get input from the community, and we're trying to compartmentalize things in actually some buckets and themes. Because what we have to do is revise our entire policy framework, and we're actually making them into different buckets or components. So one of them is tonight, growth management, which is its own special topic. But coming up, as we've said, we've got building healthy and complete communities, things like protecting what we value, like heritage and the environment, how we green, energy conservation and climate change, planning for infrastructure, which is our water and wastewater, how we service, transportation and mobility, from complete streets to active transportation, to how we get around every day. And then keeping ourselves wealthy in terms of economic development and prosperity. So all these are themes in the growth plan, and we're trying to get input into how we compartmentalize these policies moving forward. So they're key in terms of how we create, and they're consistent with all the provincial plans, but we're actually trying to make it in terms of the community input and getting valued input from you. Next slide. So really, why are you here? We're updating our official plan, but what does it actually have to do with growth? It's actually one of the most important tools for shaping development, and it's really guiding decision-making, really in terms of how we actually choose and grow, where we build houses, and how busy or things are going to get in the future and where people are going to live. And really, it's about land use planning, and it's a policy-led system, which is really complex. But the thing is, we actually do have some flexibility. Because if you remember back in sort of the 90s, if some of you are young or old, do you remember the term urban sprawl? Well, as time goes on, we replace terms and things like that. But urban sprawl really was those mass subdivisions you saw with rapid growth. If you go to York Region or Mississauga or Brampton or Milton, I mean, that's what you're talking about, urban sprawl. It was mass subdivisions, and then there was a policy shift realizing that the gobbling up of land was out of control. And the suburban dream of Canada, the attainability of a single detached home with 2 cars and a garage and a big yard, at this point seems unattainable. But it's the Canadian dream, or is it? There was a price to pay. So what happened is the province brought in a whole set of sweeping changes, which ended up being the Greenbelt, the Oak Ridges Moraine, and protectionism about urban boundaries, and drew a line. And no matter what leaning of politics you agree with, if you're liberal or conservative, we all agree that the urban sprawl was out of control. So then we bring in growth management. How do we allow people to live, have choices where they want to live, what they can afford, but yet not use the gobbling of land. We actually have to have a set of policies and a framework to understand how this works. And that's where growth management comes in. So really what it has to do with is looking into the future. And I'll explain population in just 1 minute, because the real question is, why do we have to grow? What happens? So if you take a time loop continuum of, say, when you were young to where you are now and changes, then we have to look at the differences and what they make in your community. So next slide. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick interactive poll just for the people that are on the Zoom. And we're actually going to try this, and we'd actually like some feedback. So a poll is going to pop up, and it's going to say, what is the best way for the County of Brant to engage with residents on projects to the future? So this is a bit of a teaser question at the beginning. So if you'd like to do that, the poll is going to pop up, and then we'll give you a minute or two to answer it, and we'll read you the results. So if you can see that, there's it's what is the best way to the County of Brant to engage the residents on projects of the future? Just choose the best option. Because what we're trying to do in COVID, we would actually probably be at the Paris Ag Hall tonight if we were actually meeting in person. But since we can't, we're doing it on Zoom, and we're trying to do as much as we can without doing face-to-face meetings. So there's a bunch of things that we could do, and tonight's a bit of a test run. Obviously, we'll work out the kinks, and we hope that we can engage even more as this process unfolds. So I'll give my colleagues just a second to tabulate the results. Oh, there we go. Oh, so that's super interesting. It's actually quite a few people like the combination of above. Don't mind how it's done. I just want to make sure as many people as possible are getting the information. People actually are like 32% the virtual town halls, a bit of everything, social media, surveys, questionnaires, website, email, phone one-on-one, roadside signs. And I can say that we've done all of that for this meeting. You may have not seen it, but they were all available. And I just want to reiterate that staff are always available. I sit full-time in the Paris office. I've got my phone on and also email and cell phone, and so do quite a few staff, and we're always available. Next slide. Okay, we've got one more poll. How important is getting involved with the new official plan to you? So we'll just have the survey pop up. So you just got a level of importance here. If you think that getting involved is important, either now or a little bit later. So I'll give you another minute to answer the poll. Oh, that's great. We've got 86% of our attendees actually say it's very important. So we really appreciate that. And that's what we'd like to hear. So that's really great. We really appreciate that. And since you're here tonight, we do think that it is very important that you get involved and share the word, especially those who are on Facebook. We know that we monitor quite a few of the social media sites in town. We also appreciate the counselors who are also on Facebook in the chat. So thank you very much. Next slide. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes just going through actually some of the technical stuff about the official plan, sort of the background or the bones and the meat of the technical analysis. Because it's not just policies, it's actually a whole set of detailed documentation that goes into this. So I talked about the actual Planning Act, provincial policy statement, like the hierarchy of legislation that the province outlines. And then there's us. So we actually have a consultant working on the background, and that's called our Municipal Comprehensive Review. I'll explain that in a second. And what they do is look at the housing and employment in the county and what they do, and they make an analysis and they give us the results. What that turns into is recommendations to council on certain directions, but it's also your input. So your input is super important as the public and stakeholders, because we actually have to document everything. And you also influence decision making. And you may not think you do, but you actually do. We actually have to tell the province we've engaged with the public, not just legislatively, but we've done engagement and also stakeholders in our Indigenous communities. And we tell council, we say what the public has heard. And that turns into actually a set of policies and sort of guides us in terms of how we want to move forward. And in the end, we actually do a whole set of implementation afterwards. We write guideline documents, we change our zoning, a whole bunch of other things of tools that we make sure are implemented properly. Next slide. So really a lot of people have heard about this growth plan that the province has outlined. And there's actually quite a set of sweeping changes that came in 2019 from Doug Ford's government. And it was called A Place to Grow. And as I mentioned, the County of Bran is in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, like it or not. We are the outer ring of rural municipalities. It goes all the way from us, all the way down to Niagara, up to Barrie, across to Peterborough, all the way to Northumberland County, almost to Trenton. It's huge. But we are the outer ring going around the actual core of Greater Toronto. And what it was is, like I said, it laid out the management of growth from the urban sprawl days. And I had explained that earlier. But the biggest thing is it outlines forecasts. And those are forecasting of growth in population and employment numbers that we actually have to meet, and also density and intensification targets. And I'll explain that. So there's been quite a few changes. We were quite delayed for some time. We were waiting for these numbers from the province, and we got them on August 28th of just a couple months ago. And the province amended Schedule 3, and those were the forecasts to 2051. So I know there's been some questions in about what year that we're going to, and it's 2051. So it's almost 30 years out. So think of yourself today and where you will be in 30 years. I mean, I don't know where I'll be. I hope maybe I'll be alive and healthy, but you know, it's hard to believe when you think 30 years ago in your life and 30 years from now, but that's what we're looking at. So really the growth plan has a sweeping set of changes, and our buckets or themes, as I outlined before, really that's the key drivers in the growth plan. So we have to actually implement that. We have to conform, Brandon mentioned, by July 1st, 2022. Our plan has to be approved by then by the province of Ontario. So we have quite a bit of work to do. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there's some technical bits that we're working on in the background, and it's quite a bit of documentation. As our council knows, there's going to be some quite meaty chunks coming with information in the next sort of 6 to 8 months. But really what it is, it's our municipal comprehensive review. It's the technical analysis and the background information that forms the basis of the official plan. And it's really about housing analysis, our employment analysis. We talk about how we green and climate change as well, and how we plan for infrastructure if we actually have servicing capacity for growth, and who's going to pay for it. And also providing services, because people need amenities. They want places to shop, they want recreation, they need schools, and they also need transportation. And that's what we call complete communities. And that's part of the growth plan. So I know some people say like, oh, the province directs things, but the growth plan and the complete communities framework is actually quite good. And we do have a lot of work to get to that point. So I guess, what does that mean for the County of Bran? Next slide. So again, this is where you come in. And in terms of any themes and how they relate to you and your life, this is where we actually have to look at 2051 and beyond. And we need your feedback, and that's why we're here. So we can combine it with the technical analysis and the background documentation with our provincial requirements that reflects the vision for the county moving into the forward future. So, and in terms of growth, we know that there's so many comments about even the entire Toronto area, the Greater Golden Horseshoe. It's unbelievable, it's immense. I mean, I'm from the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and even in my lifetime, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but I cannot believe the change from when I was a small child to what's happened now. It's not the same place. So, but how do we make it better? And that's what we need to do, is make it better, not worse. And if it includes controlling growth, if that's the word, or ensuring that we have amenities for people, making sure that our elderly have a place to live, and ensure that we can fiscally afford things. Because I think you've heard of what's happened in the United States in a lot of inner cities, that cities have become abandoned, bankrupt, and we do not want that to happen. And Canada's got an incredible planning framework and fiscal responsibility in almost all municipalities to ensure that will never happen here, because we don't want that happening. Next slide. So we've got a poll based on all those topics. So we'd like to know at this point, I know you're in a growth management topic for tonight, but which official plan topic most interests you? So this would be interesting for us moving forward for those who are actually in the Zoom room. So if you could respond to that. Our technical background people working hard in the other room will compile the answers in a second. Oh, that's great. So it's actually quite evened out, and even all of the above, which is excellent, because we want actually people to also be involved in all the other topics as well, especially like some of the environmental pieces and infrastructure. Interesting that though transportation, because that's quite a big topic in the county right now. But as we move forward that, and I'll explain that, and that'll come up more in building healthy and complete communities, more of the transportation piece. So, all right, great. And I think that the next slide, we've got just one more poll. We're trying to break up the presentation, make it quite interesting. So what issues would you prioritize when it comes to managing our future growth? So this is quite a good question to ask you, because really, is it about servicing? Is it about traffic? You know, do you want more recreational amenities and spaces, housing, protecting our culture and heritage, or even the speed of growth? So what are your priority issues that you feel? And this is really a big list that we're focusing on as well. We'll just tabulate the results here, see what you say. Oh, so it's quite evened out. So that's interesting. But now we've actually got more about the traffic, which is interesting because the last poll, transportation was a bit less. So traffic, road networks, street parking, you know, some of the highway access, and then also speed of growth, but quite evened out, which is good. So all topics are good for prioritization. So thank you. So next slide. So I just want to bring you back. We've got probably about 5 more minutes. And I just want to bring you back to our current situation right now. So I've talked about the legislative requirements, how we have to actually do our official plan, what we're doing in the background, or technical analysis. But what's our current situation? So Councillor Bell outlined a little bit about where we were and where we've been and where we're going in terms of the amalgamation of the county to single tier from smaller township-based small townships and how they planned, added to the growth plan, big changes in terms of being added to the outer ring of the Greater Golden Horseshoe. We created the current official plan in 2012 as it got approved. But what that ended up doing is we actually had no comprehensive growth management strategy after 2012. And a lot of our current growth that you see out there right now has been planned and approved, actually mostly between 2012 and 2019, but some even before, going back to 2006 to 2009. And what ended up happening is that from the previous official plan, numerous developments were actually appealed. So the developers did not actually agree with the county, and they went to something as was called the Ontario Municipal Board, which has actually been renamed, and some which the county lost. And that's the way it goes in many municipalities. And what ended up happening is that in May 2019, some of you may have remembered that a report was brought to council called Tap the Brakes. And it was really about the approved subdivisions and a council decision to slow down growth. And here we are today. So it's our job to look future forward in terms of a comprehensive strategy with our new plan. And that's something that we're doing right now in terms of how to plan and approve growth with a comprehensive strategy. Next slide. So I want to paint a picture, as many of you heard from across the country. I've got a brother in Vancouver, and if you want to know about growth in housing prices, it's really across Canada. And so what you're seeing here is not different than the rest of the country, but the problem is that what's been going on and what municipalities are trying to do. And what's happened in the last 5 years is not different than the rest of the country. And there's just so many external forces and the impact of development and housing. In terms of jobs and inward migration and immigration into the country, and also a slightly higher birth rate, is we're seeing impacts of a Canadian construction boom. And really that is in the last 5 years, but really mainly from 2017 to now, pre-COVID. There's been an incredible increased demand for housing, and also younger people don't want to necessarily live in single detached homes, so it's making actually a request for additional housing types. And also an aging community, where you put your mom and dad when they grow old, rather than nursing homes, where can they live? We have an exceptional high real estate value. I don't know if you saw the article about Toronto recently. It's the number 4 city in the world in terms of a bubble, which is not good. Next to Hong Kong, San Francisco, and Vancouver and London, England. And we've got some delays sometimes between planning and construction of development, especially those in legal appeal. So just to set the stage of actually across Canada and what's going on. Next slide. So I guess what does the future hold for the County of Bran? So the current population of the county, even though the signs say around 36,000 or 37,000, the census in 2016 was 37,700. We're now just under 41,000 residents. The new census is coming next year, so we'll get the exact numbers. And the province, as I mentioned, has provided population and employment forecasting to 2051. The approved amendment, as I mentioned, as of August 28th, is 59,000 residents in 2051, so 30 years from now, and the provision of 26,000 jobs. And that's a forecast that's done by the Ministry of Finance with population projections, birth and death rate, and also looking at every single municipality in the Greater Golden Horseshoe in terms of inward and outward migration, not just from out of country, but from province to province, municipality to municipality, in and out, and they do finance projections. These are updated every 5 years, and then each municipality has to update a new official plan every 10 years. So these get revised in a loop, and as we are right now, we are in a pandemic, which is called a disruptor. So we'll be curious to see how this affects the forecasting in the next 5 years. And one of the things is we've got developments already with approval, and you can see the numbers on this slide that we have quite a few units already approved And we have certain milestones and dates that we have to look at. We usually do it by 5-year increments. So right now we have 1,730 units that will be built by 2026 already in the pipeline. And by 2031, that will be 4,100 units, which is going to be a net population increase of about 8,000 residents by 2031. So just over 10 years from now. And I want to reiterate, that's the entire county, not just Paris. And it's spread out all throughout our settlement areas, St. George, Mount Pleasant, Burford, smaller communities, and also in the agricultural area where people build rural residential homes as well. Next slide. So I guess what all of this is saying is that we have to think big picture, even though we're doing technical analysis. But really what it comes down to is some of the numbers that people are asking for is currently we have enough active development in terms of housing to 2031 to meet our forecasting targets already. And that includes things like our density, which the province gives us, and also intensification, which is 15% in built up areas, like say Paris or St. George. So we have to actually look at all the factors and in terms of forecasting housing demand and where people need to live. And we need to gradually shift from, it's called ground orientated housing, which is more single detached, to some different types of housing. Even though that there is a market demand for single detached, it's becoming actually, as we call it, an attainability issue. The terms affordability and attainability are mixed up sometimes, but really it's about attainable. And it's very hard for a young person to get into the housing market right now, especially with CMHC provisions on mortgages and a certain amount of down payment. How can someone afford a $500,000 starter home with a very small down payment? It's just not possible. So what we're trying to do is help our younger generation, our middle and older generation, to ensure that they always have a place to live that's affordable. They have money and they have the ability to put food on the table for their family, and they have jobs. So we hope that our new official plan will help us create the tools to manage this and provide these things. And that's all part of growth management. Next slide. So we're going to have one more poll, break it up. So given the need to manage our growth, what does managed growth look like to you? So the poll will pop up. So in terms of, should growth be more blended? Or do you want it to slow down? Should it go up, not out? Or should it just be balanced with a range of different amenities and housing types and uses? So we'll wait for you all to answer. Oh, wow, that's good. That's interesting. Okay, growth should be balanced, a range of different community amenities and housing types and uses. That's good, but a bit of both, so that's good. So that's interesting. It's quite a mixed answer. So thanks everyone, really appreciate that. That's a really good answer to have. Next slide. So we've been asked many times, how can we stop or slow down growth? How can we just stop it? Stop growth. No more houses, don't build anymore. But what does the term growth mean? So I guess it's important that we focus on our efforts to manage and control our growth in order to ensure that we all have sort of a beneficial effect to everyone. And as I've mentioned, it's all about, complete communities, having the ability to live your life and also having housing options for yourself and your family and your friends and your parents. So, but what growth means is actually a fiscal exercise, because zero growth actually means decline, because it's based on population, it's mortality and birth rates. And if we have no growth, we actually do have decline in terms of population, because our birth rates currently sort of generally in Canada are lower than our death rates. So we actually have in population a bit of a decline. And that's why there's inward migration and immigration to boost these, and also for people to fill jobs. And it's also about paying for things. So we actually have to have a little bit of growth to ensure that your taxes don't go sky high, because in terms of providing the amenities. So it has to be a completely balanced exercise. And the official plan actually works with our fiscal responsibility, our finance department, our asset management, and also doing that all together to ensure that everything is fiscally responsible. So I guess, how do we manage our growth? We can't stop it, but we can manage it. And we can also do, as you've seen in surveys, different types and how to manage our trade-offs, our priorities, how we'll grow, where we'll grow, and what it'll look like. Next slide. And as I mentioned before, there's types to do this, and you've seen that just in the poll. We can either go out, which is called a settlement boundary expansion, so expanding the boundary of a town. We can grow in, which is infill, filling vacant lots, or intensification, density. And then also, if we can manage our growth in terms of greenfield development. So I guess also we have to talk about infrastructure and master planning. We've got fiscal responsibility, as I've said, and also in terms of our master planning. So working hand in hand with our operations department on a lot of the master servicing plans and the transportation master plan, which is all part of the official plan as well. And these have to be coordinated to ensure growth is managed and it's paid for as well. Next slide. So as I've said, these are about planning decisions with careful management. And in terms of discussing our county's future, we want to create a place to live, work, and play. We have to rely on good decisions, and we have to manage the outcome of these decisions. And we have key planning principles to guide us. Next slide. So some of our visions and principles moving forward, and these are the things that will shape our official plan moving forward, this is why public involvement is so important. So these are the questions we have to ask ourselves, and these are just some of them. Should we intensify? Should we support a range and mix of housing options? Should we space out our growth, yet still meet the forecasting? Should we increase supply of housing that's affordable and attainable for all? Do we need to create vibrant, complete communities? What does that mean? And how do we accommodate jobs and people for the next 30 years? So next slide. So right now, as we recap, and we're going to finish off now because it's quite a long presentation, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon to finish off for the night. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jen. So that was a lot of information for everyone, and we are, just as Glenn and it's been mentioned before, but as was mentioned, we are recording this session, and we will be providing this video for folks to view afterwards. But just a key kind of to hit it home point here, this plan really does belong to all of us. We're here as staff to kind of sift through the technical information, but we really do need your input. And there will be very particular types of questions that we'll be asking about growth management and our development. And you can see a few of those here on the screen, but we'll be kind of pushing out more information based on the buckets or the topics of interest that we have. And you'll see some of that in the coming weeks. For example, the upcoming event in the next couple of weeks for the next town hall. But we also have a number of other ways to engage with us. Brant.ca/new official plan. That's kind of our one-stop shop for everything official plan. We're going to keep things updated on there. As Glenn mentioned, there's some discussion papers. There's long versions for those who want to get into the technical information. There's some short summaries for those who may not have the time or may not want to look through all of that information. There's some summaries provided as well. We're going to have more surveys, but we have our growth management survey available right now. We'll be doing a lot of information or posting a lot of information on our Facebook page, and we have this video streaming live to there right now. We also have what we're doing is a digital mailing list. So instead of sending out kind of snail mail stuff to people, we have a dedicated mailing list for some of our planning projects, the policy projects, and one of them here is the new official plan. So there's a few links here on this slide, and we'll be kind of sending these out to folks to keep pushing out that information. But feel free to give us a call any point during our business days. There's a few of us here in the office, and we're happy to touch base with you. Otherwise, officialplan@brant.ca. That email is our go-to email to get in touch with us. Comments, questions, whatever you want to mention that way, feel free to send it through. Especially with COVID-19 in mind, we're trying our best to be digital. We know that doesn't work for everyone, but any ideas that you have of how we can reach more people are always welcome. And with that, I'll turn it over to Glenn again to continue our engagement here with our viewers and have some staff answer some questions. So I'll hand it back to Glenn.
Great. Thanks, Brandon, and thank you to both of our speakers for a very informative presentation. For those of you who have joined us in progress, and I know some of you have, you've been listening to County of Brant planning staff as they've taken us through some core information about the initiative. And thank you as well to all of you for participating in tonight's session, both for your interest in the topic and for the questions that have already been provided. There are a number of them that have been sent in, and we'll again try to cover as many as possible this evening in the time available. So let's move to the questions now. And as the questions have been submitted, staff have been reviewing them to identify those that are similar in nature with a view to addressing any duplication. And in some cases, they've been consolidating multiple questions into a single one. So please don't worry if the question posed this evening isn't exactly as you may have asked it. And again, there may not be time to get to all of the questions this evening, but county staff will be reviewing them and they will be documented as input to the initiative. So let's get to the questions now. And I guess I'm going to go to Jennifer first. Jennifer, there have been a number of questions. I might go so far as to say many questions about meeting the needs of a growing population. And there are a number of them about infrastructure of different kinds. So people are asking, what are the county's plans to address things like sports facilities and the need for schools and transportation and bridges? So both soft and hard infrastructure. And relating to that, some people are asking, why don't we put the infrastructure in place first before new residents come to the county? And I know you touched on that, Jennifer, and some of that speaks to what we'll be talking about on October 21st. But let me invite you to jump in again around the issues of infrastructure. You know, why aren't we, or when will we put in place the different kinds of things that people are looking for?
All right, thanks, Glenn. I'll try my best to answer the questions. But if I don't answer the question in the entirety, then either chat again or we can send you more information afterwards just due to time. So I guess the first question in terms of infrastructure and providing amenities, and that includes hard and soft services, we like to say. So first of all, in terms of providing infrastructure, I know this is a huge topic, is like, why doesn't a municipality pave the roads, build new roads, put the water pipes in before the subdivisions come in? Why do we have to endure this construction later, and why is it always so late? The biggest thing is there's a saying it's called growth pays for growth. Even though that's not 100% true, it's about 70% of new developments end up paying for growth. It's actually called development charges. So every time a new house is built, a certain amount of money, when that new house is built and paid for, the owner of the actual cost ends up putting money back into the municipality. It's called DCs, as I said, development charges. And that's what ends up paying for things over time. As I said, this exercise is based in fiscal responsibility. Municipalities need to manage their fiscal responsibility and they need to spend money accordingly. In terms of new communities, it's usually the developer of say a large scale subdivision that actually inputs the money into frontage in terms of servicing that area. That includes parkland dedication, new school sites that are dedicated to each school board, in terms of sports facilities, paying for that in terms of say soccer fields or contributing to a new community center. That's usually how it works in terms of a provincial framework. The municipality can obviously do things on its own, but it's really about cost. But we understand that it is very frustrating that these things are not done prior, especially in terms of traffic, congestion, and new developments, and everything just always seems so late. That's the way it's done, but with this complete communities framework that we have to do, it's really changing it up, and it's making things make us look a little bit different about how we provide amenities, and make sure that everything's done more in a built-up core area so people have these things already. So I hope that answers some of the questions. If you want more information, please email us or give me a call. That would be great.
Great. So Jennifer, let me put a couple of others to you. And you touched on this earlier about why the county, can't simply say no to growth and just keep things the way they are. But we've had a number of questions from people who are asking, when is enough enough? What's the end goal, the end game here? Do we continue to expand until there's no more room left to grow? Like what are the limits here around growth? Are you able to comment at all on some of those issues this evening?
Yep, thanks, Glenn. I absolutely can expand more on that. So in terms of enough is enough, we've heard this more and more, and it's also a political issue in terms of no more growth. But what that means is that there's, as I've outlined in the presentations, there's different ways of growth and managing the growth. There's out, there's up, there's in, or there's spreading it out somehow. And what I'm talking about is something physical in terms of growth. And what I mean is something that's built. So when you say growth, growth also talks about money, jobs, amenities, paying for things, and not just something tangible or physical like a house. Because what you see a lot around you is also the physical aspect of land use planning and development, which is one part of growth. Growth also is new roads, paying for those roads, transportation, putting pipes in the ground, things like that. So that's part of it. The housing is just one aspect of it. So enough is enough in terms of building houses. I provided that statistic back on one of the slides in terms of we have enough in the pipeline of already enough is enough, that no more expansion of a settlement boundary may happen. Like we may not have to do any of that, and that's part of managing our growth. And part of these scenarios that we'll be bringing to council for their decision in the coming months. So there's more to come in terms of what that means of, no more growth, slow growth, status quo, different scenarios on how to do that. So
one more for you, Jennifer. And this is, I think, is a short and simple one. I think some participants are wanting clarity about how far out this official plan looks. Because we've talked about looking out 10 years, 30 years, and we've talked about employment and residential forecasts that go out to 2050 and 41 and so forth. But then we said this is a 5-year official plan. So what is the actual length of the official plan? How far out does it look?
All right, thanks, Glenn. Yep, the official plan, so this new official plan will do a planning horizon to 2051. So it's a 30-year plan. And that's conforming to the growth plan, which puts the forecasting to that date. So we have to look long-term, and we actually have to project, and that includes our transportation master plan, our master servicing for infrastructure, working with the province in terms of metro links, potential transit and train connections, things like that. So it's 2051 is the date. But what I said in the presentation is that every 5 years, the province redoes its forecasting. So it keeps going back to look at the date. So we do a new official plan with the forecast to 2051. But our job is then we have a 10-year increment to update our official plan. So in 2031, you're going to get another official plan, which is going to have revised numbers and things like that, because things happen, right? Like we're in a pandemic right now. We don't know how this is going to play out. We know the housing market's going strong right now, but we haven't seen the end of how this is going to impact us. So.
Thanks, Jennifer, for the clarification. So I'm going to give this next question to your colleague, Michelle, because it speaks to environmental leadership. And someone has asked, what plans are there to become an environmental leader as a county in either the province or the country or the world? So to what degree do you want to be an environmental leader, and what plans are there to bring that to fruition? Michelle, do you want to jump in on that one?
Definitely. Great question. Definitely great to be an environmental leader. The environmental planning position it's a new position in January. So I bring environmental experience in terms of protecting our natural areas, our forests, our rivers. One of the first projects outside of the official plan reviews, we're looking at our tree conservation bylaw, promoting good forestry practices. Should we be protecting individual trees in our settlement areas? So we do have a dedicated website, brant.ca/trees. There's contact information. You can email myself. We are bringing an information report forward to council on November 3rd, just to go over draft feedback, draft bylaws, get some feedback, and initiate that discussion. And as part of that project, we've received over 220 surveys, overall great recognition for the environment and the benefits it provides. As well as that, through the growth management, we've received a lot of great support for better protection of the environment. As a planner throughout my career, I found that the best strategy is you need clear policies. You need to outline what you want to protect, how you want to protect it. If the policies aren't clear, it becomes much harder. In 2017, we've heard a lot about the growth plan. They did provide for greater protection. They mapped a natural heritage system for the growth plan. It builds upon the Oak Ridges Moraine, the Niagara Escarpment, and the Greenbelt. And what it's done, it's outside of settlement areas. It said that for the most part, development isn't permitted in or within 30 meters of woodlands or wetlands or fish habitat. So it's setting aside permanent protection for a wide natural heritage system across the greater Golden Horseshoe area. And so that sets clear policies. As part of the official plan, we'll bring those policies and the mapping into the new official plan. I think what the county needs to decide, once we're in settlement areas, the policies get a lot more gray. We're looking at the provincial policy statement, and the test is no negative impacts. It's not no development. So it becomes a lot more gray. In some municipalities, they've said, we want to go beyond that. And similar to the growth plan, we're going to include policies that say we're not allowed to develop our forests, or it's going to be very limited. I've seen official plans in the region of Waterloo, the city of Guelph, that do not allow development in various natural features, and they also require minimum buffers. So they set clear policies, the community knows what to expect. So certainly the official plan is a great place to be an environmental leader. We need to hear from the community and what they feel is important to protect.
Great, thanks, Michelle. I'm going to give this next question to another of your colleagues named Jessica Kitchen. Somebody is asking Jennifer, and this speaks to some of the things that Jennifer was talking about. They're asking or saying, first of all, that there's a very long wait list for seniors, in particular within Burford, but I assume that applies perhaps to other areas of the county as well. And they're wondering whether the official plan will address housing for those who are aging and for vulnerable populations, and will it allow for ongoing aging in place? Jessica, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure, Glenn, I'd be happy to. So this plan will absolutely take a look at our aging in place options. what we can do for affordable housing, attainable housing options, different typologies for needs, whether it be accessibility issues that we're seeing, definitely taking a look at our vulnerable populations throughout the county's communities. Even though the county is a very beautiful place and we have tons of space to grow, we still need to look after our more vulnerable populations and find suitable housing with perhaps some wraparound services incorporated. The county actually completed a single detached build agreement with Habitat for Humanity, which we are very excited about. And we're also looking into some further partnerships as well with some different affordable housing partners. And this is actively being sought. This isn't something that we're waiting on for our new official plan. This is something that we're actually moving forward on now. And we will also look to address this through our upcoming policies through the official plan as well.
Great, thanks, Jessica. This next question, Jennifer, perhaps is best put to you. And I always see this in meetings of this type. People are wondering about whether the population forecast is a target. Is it something that's flexible? Is it a limit that you can't go beyond? Is it a requirement that you have to reach it? So the specific question is how likely, or there was a couple of questions, but one of them is how likely is the County of Brant to reach the 59,000 population forecast, given that it's 30 years out? And again, is it a limit? Is it a requirement? Is there flexibility there?
All right, thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I can answer that question for sure. It actually came up in council last night, and I know Councillor Bell and I have had quite a bit of discussion on this in terms of targets versus forecasts and what they mean, because the growth plan lays out those words constantly. What is a target? What is a forecast? So I guess just quickly, a target is really meant to be met or exceeded in terms of a definition. A forecast is assessment of future performance, what we think will happen. It focuses on decision making and what may or will happen. So in terms of targets in the growth plan, they have two. One is density and one is intensification. The County of Brant has a target of 15% intensification in built up areas. And then they have another target for density for new development, which is hard to picture of what that looks like on the ground, but it's 40 people and jobs per hectare. And that sort of tacks on to our forecasting. The number I showed you, the 59,000, is a forecast. It's what we think will happen. It's the province's number. The 59,000 that the province gave us on August 28th is actually what they're saying is a minimum. They told us that the reference forecast is a floor or a minimum, but in terms of a high forecast, the county won't go at all beyond that. These numbers are being crunched right now, and these are part of the growth forecasting scenarios that will be brought to council in the very near future. But I hope that explains it. So, I mentioned on also another slide that in terms of what we've got in the pipeline, say for new development, as we talk about something called housing units, you'll see that term interchanged quite a bit. When they talk about a housing unit, they assume a unit's got usually about 2.3 people living in it. So if you times the amount of housing units, say, that are sort of in our pipeline to say 2026 to 2031, we do a population count. And I've said on that slide to 2031, that's an additional 8,000 people. So what we do is we do a number crunching game and we try to see, like, are these forecasts reasonable? But really the province gives us a number and it's our job to tell them if it's proper or not. So, and that's the exercise we're doing right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So let's get Brandon back into the discussion. And this next question speaks to themes of aesthetics and heritage and community character. And more specifically, the question, Brandon, is the visual appeal of our historic communities is extremely important. And we hear that a lot, of course, in the County of Brant. Are there plans to better protect the heritage look and feel of our many communities throughout the County of Brant, and specifically when considering new development and the overall design? And to what degree can the official plan address some of those kinds of issues? Brandon, go ahead, please.
That's a great question. Thank you, Glenn. And thank you for the folks that are interested in heritage. That's always a great topic, and I love talking about it. So I am directly involved with our great heritage committee here in the County of Brant. And we unfortunately haven't been able to meet as often with COVID in mind, but there's lots of desire there and guidance from those folks to kind of push some of these things that we're talking about into the forefront with our new developments. There's definitely lots of tools that are available to us, with especially so with the Ontario Heritage Act. We can use designations in heritage conservation districts. We can use things through the Planning Act like design guidelines to kind of say, hey, this is what this should look like, or these are the types of the things we want to honor that enhance our heritage or enhance the look of the heritage. And we can apply those to certain areas, to the entirety of the county. There are tools in our toolbox, and it'll be very important to set those out in the official plan to say, hey, this is kind of our priority, this is the objective we're looking for, and then push beyond the official plan into the implementation tools. And that will probably be the key for the heritage side of things, is to put those implementation tools into play. So if people do want to see a great level of heritage protection, maybe a heritage conservation district protecting our downtowns, or certain heritage designations and heritage granting to encourage property owners to keep up the look and feel of their heritage homes. So there are lots of opportunities, and the official plan will definitely be a way to create that foundation and push us to that toolbox to encourage the great heritage that is here in the County of Brant.
Thanks, Brandon. This next question is agriculture related, and perhaps it's best put to Jessica. Jessica, someone has asked, how will the county ensure farmland protection and strict urban boundaries? And will there be strict urban boundaries?
Absolutely. Another great question, Glenn. Thanks. So in order to ensure that we keep our agricultural lands protected and our agricultural land systems and our very important food networks, there is the growth plan and the Greenbelt plan, which the province has put in place, and they update it on a regular basis. And we have to conform and comply to these plans. And this is part of the overall exercise of developing the new official plan, is to ensure that we come into conformity and that we're always respecting that provincial legislation. And that's what helps us really protect, in the County of Brant, our very, very important agricultural lands, our agricultural food networks. These are essential pieces to the County of Brant for our economical structure. They also are where we get our food from, and they also help us enjoy where we live, and they contribute so many educational and tourism pieces. We're actually also implementing towards the beginning of November, hoping to get our on-farm diversified uses up and running, which is also a very important policy project, which we actually chose to move forward on outside of the new official plan process. And that's going to definitely assist in creating some more value added and retaining and related uses in our agricultural areas. And it's also just going to emphasize how important these areas actually are. And that was a great question. So thank you.
Thank you. And we have another boundary related question, and maybe this one's best put to Jennifer. Someone is asking, are the settlement areas and boundaries going to be changed through this process? And I don't know if it's too premature at this stage to answer that, but if that's the case, you can let everyone know. So they're wondering, are the settlement areas and boundaries going to be changed through the process? And is there greater flexibility in the rural areas?
All right, thanks, Glenn. Absolutely, I can answer that. But in terms of a decision, I cannot, because that will be up to council to decide if that will be the case in the sort of coming months and year to form a policy direction and growth management strategy part of our official plan. So what I talked about in terms of growth is we have options, and that will form a basis of scenario. So what we do is we actually look at our land needs. So how much land do we have currently vacant? So the provincial policy statement says every municipality has to have a land supply of up to 15 years at any given time for housing. So we have to have that amount always available. We also have to plan for a 25-year horizon in terms of planning. So we have to have all of that information. So what does that mean in terms of boundaries? So these are different scenarios that we have to pose in terms of what do we have to do to meet all that? Do we have enough land currently? So we're doing that analysis right now. We do have actually quite a bit of land because we don't just look at Paris. This is not a Paris exercise. This is a county exercise. We look at all of our settlement areas, all of our hamlets, all of our villages. We look at St. George, Paris, Burford, Mount Pleasant, Harley, every little town imaginable with the boundary that goes around it. Should it stay the same? Because we don't like to change it if we don't have to. And that's part of the growth management. So we actually have to look at, in terms of meeting those forecasts, do we have enough land supply? So I can't answer that question in terms of a decision, yes or no. But I showed you a slide in terms of what we already have in the pipe that's already inside the boundaries right now. That goes to 2031 to 2036. So something like that probably won't change till then, but these are decisions. But what we do have to make decisions on is the type of growth. Do we want to put some different types of buildings for seniors in that are maybe 3 or 4 stories? Do we want to do like some more denser things to meet our targets? You know, some infill conversions. Some of the developers in the county actually have some really innovative ideas, things like that. So we're trying to do all that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that any expansion of any boundary will happen, but hopefully, you know, that's up to council to decide in the future what makes sense for the county. So thank you.
Great. So Jennifer, let's stick with you for this next one. I saw the first part of the question. I thought, boy, this could be an all-night answer, but it is more specific. The first part said, can you explain the municipal tax structure? And I thought, wow, that's big. But it goes on to say to pay for the amenities such as trails, parks, and so forth. So what's the relationship again between the municipal tax structure and paying for those kinds of amenities and infrastructure? And then the question goes on to ask, for example, employment lands are considerably more than the amount of residential assessment dollars. So can you speak to that issue as well, please?
Well, I will try my best, but that's something that I'll have to get our corporate finance to get back to you on. I'm not an expert on the tax structure. So whoever posed that question, we can get back to you on in terms of tax assessment and things like that, if that's the information that you're looking for. But in terms of paying for the growth, can you just repeat what the second part of the question was, Glenn? Because I can't see it on the chat here.
There's actually a few components to it.
Yeah.
One, they were wondering about basically how we can use tax dollars or other revenues to pay for amenities such as trails and parks. But then they were also raising the issue of the difference between employment lands and residential properties in terms of what they contribute as assessment dollars. So again, I don't know if there's much you can say about that this evening, but I just thought I would give it a shot and put it to you.
Okay, well, I can explain how development works and how growth and development pays for things like that. And it sort of does relate to taxes, but if the question's not answered and it's entirely for the people or person who has posed it, then we can get information later. But in terms of new development, I explained earlier on in terms of development charges, when a new house or structure or something is built, there's something called a development charge put on it, and that helps the municipality pay for what we call hard and soft services. Hard services like our transportation, our sewers, and our water, things like that, that's considered hard. And soft services like community amenities, parks, libraries, things like that, that the municipality contributes to. Now, the province of Ontario changed something recently, and it's actually called something, the community benefit charges, and that's mostly focusing on the soft services. And it's changed completely the way municipalities have to structure the finances around new developments and the way that developers pay for those soft services. It's a bit of a change to the way it was done before. There's pro and con to it. Municipalities don't have as much control, and the cost hierarchy has changed, and also in terms of parkland dedication. But new developments need to pay for these things, and because the municipality won't be on the hook for them. And in terms of a tax assessment with new structures, depending on the size, obviously it gets assessed and how it benefits, the way the municipal finance works, and in terms of the contribution of providing those amenities. So that goes to our corporate services and the way they use the taxes around the county, and they prioritize their projects. How they spend the money. And I know our CAO, Michael Bradley, is working very hard to ensure that the county does not go into deficit during COVID, because a municipality usually has to maintain a surplus at any given time, things like that. So if that didn't answer your questions, we'd be pleased to provide more information after.
Thanks, Jennifer. So we were scheduled to go up until 9 tonight, and that's about 15 minutes from now. Let's see if we can shoehorn in a few more questions before we talk about next steps and where things go from here. And I'll ask our responders to be as concise as possible so that we can get as many questions in as possible before we wrap up. And this next question speaks to the issue of affordability. And Jessica, maybe I'll put it to you. Someone has said, my son recently graduated and would like to stay in the community, but housing prices are too costly. Even small units in the new condominiums that are being built are way too expensive. What is being done to address this issue? And I guess more specifically, what can be done in the context of the new official plan to try to address issues of affordability?
Right, so that's a terrific question. So thank you for that question. It actually plays quite nicely into an initiative that was approved at council just last night for additional residential units, ARUs, within the county. So staff has actually brought forward another policy initiative outside of the new official plan being approved and developed. And that's just based on the feedback that we were hearing from the community, the need for housing, for more affordable options, attainable options. And so what the additional residential units will actually accomplish is the creation of further secondary units, accessory to primary residential dwellings. So this may be in the form of, for instance, basement apartments, coach homes, lofts over garages. These are all different types of what we refer to as ARUs. And this will hopefully begin to offset some of what we're seeing market costs, which are, as we all well know, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, not quite as attainable as one may like or one's budget may suggest. So we're hoping that that initiative brings forward many more opportunities for many more residents to be able to stay in the county and also stay comfortably. The official plan, the new official plan policies will also take a look at further housing typologies. So further mix of housing, what that looks like in different areas throughout the county, whether it be suggested by servicing and infrastructure. All of those things very important for safety will be considered through this plan and in consultation with our other departments and agencies as well.
Thank you, Jessica. Brandon, I'm going to put this one to you. Some people have commented that they're finding this interactive Q&A session quite useful and valuable, but we are going to run out of time in the next few minutes. They're wondering, is there going to be more information posted about tonight's Q&As, either on the website or somewhere else? And maybe you can speak to that one for us.
Yeah, that's a great question. So like I've kind of pushed, engagement is a huge thing for this project. So there will be lots more information, especially involved with the great questions that we're getting with our Q&A functionality here. I'm sure there's questions on our Facebook, and we've had a few come into our emails as well. So what we'll be doing is kind of compiling all of those questions, summarizing them, and then providing some more in-depth responses for people. So I would encourage those who are interested in those responses, or seeing kind of the question and answer sheet from tonight that we will send out, to join our mailing list. Visit brant.ca/planning projects. And there's a couple of our projects that are on that list, but you'll want to select new official plan and sign up for that. And then you'll get that in the short little while. Once we prepare it for you, it'll be sent to your inbox.
Thanks, Brandon. So let's get at least one more question in. And Michelle, I'm going to put this one to you. Someone has asked, as the county continues to grow, what measures will be taken to protect the county's natural features, which people are very proud of and feel very good about, things like rivers, forests, and wildlife? So how do we go about ensuring that they are adequately and appropriately protected as there is continued growth in the county? Michelle?
Thank you for that question. The first step that the county is undergoing is a comprehensive mapping exercise. So where are our natural features? Where are woodlands? Where are wetlands? Where are rivers? So we're looking at sources from, say, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans is providing information on species at risk, looking at what information the conservation authorities have. So getting all that information together, mapping it, possibly looking at linkages between those features beyond the natural heritage system that the province has mapped. How can we create a system that's, I guess, important to the county? So a county natural heritage system that's linked together. And as I alluded to earlier, creating policies to protect that. And there's nothing to stop the county from going on the minimum provincial requirement when we're in our settlement areas. Currently, the county does have quite a low forest coverage of about 14%. If you look at traditional documents such as how much habitat is enough by Environment Canada, it's based on science. You want to be looking to achieve 30% forest coverage. So the county is currently quite low in terms of the forest coverage. So we should be creating policies to protect that and grow it where trees, and there are situations where trees do need to be removed. So looking at replacement trees, as we're doing development applications, reviewing site plans, let's get some landscaping and green infrastructure to help with climate change. And that goes along with aesthetics, climate change, and enhancing the natural environment, and just looking what we can do through the development process just to create a better natural heritage system. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And as mentioned, the session was scheduled to go until 9 o'clock. And to be respectful of your time, we'll look to wrap things up shortly. Just before I invite Brandon to quickly recap next steps and to share any thoughts about what he's heard this evening, I wanted to thank everyone again for participating, and a special thank you, of course, to those who shared questions and comments. There were some very good and insightful ones, and we're very appreciative of them. I also wanted to thank all of our elected officials, both for joining us tonight, but more than that, for their ongoing valued service to the community, which is much appreciated. From my perspective as the facilitator, it's been a real pleasure facilitating this session with such a thoughtful, knowledgeable, and articulate group. So over to Brandon to recap next steps and where things go from here, including, again, opportunities to be further engaged in the process, from surveys to discussion papers to the OP website and the upcoming October 21st session. Brandon?
Thanks a lot, Glenn. I'll just keep this short and sweet. It's important that we have conversations with all of you. This is a County of Brant, made in County of Brant plan that we're creating. There's lots of opportunities to engage with us here, shown on the screen. And like I said, and Glenn has mentioned as well, we do have our next town hall meeting coming up on October 21st at 7. And that one will be focusing more on building healthy and complete communities. So just a bit more particularities about what we need our communities and want our communities to look like, what we need in them. So keep that in mind. If there's feedback from this particular event, as we're all kind of learning on the go too with the way COVID has been. So if there's feedback from this particular event, feel free to send it to us at officialplan@brant.ca, or give us a call here at the office. What worked well, what didn't work well, what you'd like to see better next time, that kind of thing. We're definitely here to listen, and we're excited to engage with you. And with that, I'll hand it back to Glenn just to close us off.
Great. So give me just 30 more seconds before we formally adjourn. For those of you with web-enabled devices, at the conclusion of the online meeting, that is when you leave the webinar, you should be taken to a growth management related survey, which we encourage you to complete. So if you have the time, if you are so inclined, please take the opportunity to provide your perspective and your input on a number of important topics. And I'll just close by saying thank you to the various personnel who made this session possible. Thank you to the planning team for their hard work in preparing for this evening. And thank you again to all of you for your participation. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and good night.